Now, Walz is weird, but he disguises it under the costume of phony compassion, a fake politician who masks destructive ideas under the guise of empathy. At a 2017 town hall, he implied 10-year-old boys should be able to invade girls' bathrooms because it's all—
Tim Walz is now saying about Trump supporters, and forgive me, I'm just reading a quote from Tim Walz, "I think I could kick most of their ass."
Oh boy, he'd be in trouble.
Is there any way to know?
Well, he's a loser, you know, I mean, the guy's a loser.
Think you've heard it all. Think again, because this wasn't just a wrong turn in politics. It was a head-on collision with absolute chaos. Gutfeld and Donald Trump, yes, that unpredictable, combustible pair, teamed up to roast Tim Walz like it was the 4th of July, and he was the only burger left on the grill. One moment, Walz was serving up calm, perfectly rehearsed speeches, and the next, boom, he was scrambling to dodge scorching sarcasm and ego blasts like a nervous contestant trapped on a game show set inside a battlefield. But what sparked this firestorm? How did Minnesota become the nation's favorite punchline overnight? Get ready, because this fiasco is more humiliating than watching a politician butcher Bon Jovi at a karaoke night in Mar-a-Lago. And yes, it really happened.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank and service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there," and then ran away.
I think I would have won. Susie would say I would have won Pennsylvania easily anyway, even if the governor ran, the real governor, not the governor from Minnesota, he's a sick puppy, that guy. That poor guy, I feel sorry for him. But they made a bad choice with him.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank and service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there," and then ran away.
I think I would have won. Susie would say I would have won Pennsylvania easily anyway, even if the governor ran, the real governor, not the governor from Minnesota, he's a sick puppy, that guy. That poor guy, I feel sorry for him. But they made a bad choice with him.
They say true leaders have vision, but Tim Walz must have skimmed the memo and decided it said television instead, because the only thing he seems glued to is the screen airing his latest over-the-top press conference, where he somehow twists the blame onto gravity, sunshine, or maybe even Gutfeld for every catastrophe that blows up under his watch. He's running Minnesota like it's a glitchy video game stuck on disaster mode, and the players already out of extra lives. Think potholes are frustrating? His policies are craters, deeper, more destructive, and almost suspiciously aimed at hitting every nerve in the state on purpose.
With Walz, it's hard to even bring him up. He has a resting snitch face. You know? He forfeited his man card during COVID and the riots. And you're right. And also, at that diner, of course, he left early. So don't you find it weird that for a terrifying threat to democracy that Trump is, not a single interviewer in his history has approached him with—
Under Tim Walz's so-called leadership, Minnesota has turned into the political equivalent of a forgotten frozen casserole, left in the back of the fridge since 2020, quietly mutating into something you'd need a hazmat suit to handle. It's flavorless, outdated, and possibly hazardous. Yet somehow he keeps trying to serve it up with a shiny platter of excuses, as if the public is too naive to taste the rot. Meanwhile, Gutfeld, armed with sarcasm as wild and jittery as a raccoon after 10 shots of espresso, and Trump, storming in with the subtlety of a wrecking ball welded to a monster truck, joined forces to scorch this political train wreck beyond recognition. And here's the kicker: they didn't even have to try that hard.
fraud.
Yeah, this one's the core. We saw just recently Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question. which is why you never hear.
This political takedown didn't even need a punchline. The absurdity wrote itself. When you've got a governor who locked down the state so tightly during the pandemic that it felt like even Wi-Fi signals needed official clearance to move, you'd expect something, anything, to have improved by now. But nope. The roads still look like they've been under siege by a meteor shower. Taxes are skyrocketing so high they might need parachutes to come back down. And crime. Minneapolis feels like a real-life video game gone wrong, except there's no reset button, no extra lives, and the graphics are somehow worse than reality. It's pure chaos, and the captain's seat is completely empty.
I'm especially talking about these old white guys who seem to disappoint us on a regular basis in this country.
Dude. You're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed.
And what's Tim Walz's big master plan to fix this disaster? Shovel more money into committees, endless studies, and advisory panels that accomplish nothing, like trying to stop a collapsing dam with duct tape, crossed fingers, and a half-hearted pep talk. He treats real, urgent crises as if they're minor software bugs in some PowerPoint presentation. His entire strategy could be summed up as, if I pretend it's not happening, maybe it'll magically fix itself. This isn't leadership, it's procrastination on a Broadway stage, dressed up in a suit and tie and hoping the audience mistakes it for competence.
Are people misreading Tim's odd greeting? The man of the hour, Tim Walz, brings us our second video of the day, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it. I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Walz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it, they shake, he pulls her close, and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh yeah, weird.
Then Trump storms onto the scene with the kind of unfiltered firepower Minnesota never requested, but might just deserve. One glance at Walz's wreck of a record, and Trump bursts out laughing like he's just been handed a crown engraved with most useless governor in the Midwest. Sure, Trump has never been shy of controversy, but standing next to Walz, he suddenly looks like Winston Churchill wearing a red baseball cap. At least Trump acts, even if it's loud, unpredictable, and sometimes defies logic. Walz, on the other hand, governs like a substitute teacher who misplaced the syllabus. Plenty of talking, zero control. The only real movement in Minnesota right now. The stampede of residents and businesses bolting for the border like it's a reverse Oregon Trail. No one's dying of dysentery this time. They're being buried alive under sky-high taxes and policies that make absolutely no sense.
I think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have periods, but then I met Tim Walz.
Let's talk about what's happening to businesses under Walz's reign of red tape and confusion. Minnesota has morphed into the place where companies go to slowly suffocate under so many pointless regulations. They actually start longing for California's bureaucracy. One poor soul just wanted to open a simple lemonade stand, only to find out they needed a zoning permit, a carbon footprint analysis, and a full environmental impact review just to pour a cup. And education? You'd think a former teacher would know how to run a classroom, but instead he's turned schools into bizarre social experiments. Algebra, optional, pronoun pop quizzes, absolutely mandatory. The only thing rising fast in Minnesota's education system isn't test scores. It's pure, unfiltered confusion.
On Minnesota, there were a lot of horrific details that came out today about the suspect who's been charged there. Have you called the governor yet or been able to speak to any of them?
I don't really call him. Look, I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling him. Why would I call him? I could call him and say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess. So, I could be nice and call him, but why waste time?
We got ourselves in this mess because we weren't bold enough to stand up and say, you damn right we're proud of these policies. We're going to put them in, and we're going to execute them.
So, wait, you lost because you weren't woke enough? That's like telling Joy Behar she's not eating enough Doritos. That's like Jasmine Crockett saying, I gotta black this up.
Meanwhile, Trump just crosses his arms and watches Walz stumble through press briefings like a dad trying to set up Wi-Fi. No clue, no patience, and no real progress. And Gutfeld, he's having the time of his life, turning Walz into a never-ending punchline that practically writes itself. He once joked that watching Walz lead is like watching a squirrel operate a forklift. Hilarious at first, until you see the wreckage. Walz brags about massive climate goals, then hops straight into a gas guzzler without blinking. He champions workers' rights, right up until unions actually make demands, and then he vanishes like smoke. His pandemic policies were pure stage play, quoting science 1 minute, then deciding bars should close at 10 p.m. as if COVID has a curfew. Even Trump couldn't resist taking a jab, especially when Walz kept liquor stores open but locked down gyms. That one decision alone says it all, doesn't it?
The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this.
And somehow, almost unbelievably, Walz manages to keep a perfectly straight face through it all, as if he truly believes no one notices the entire house burning down behind him. When crime explodes in Minneapolis, he starts talking about community engagement. He's trying to sell yoga classes to a SWAT team. People aren't binge-watching Netflix anymore. They're glued to crime-tracking apps just to make it through the night. His economic plan? It's less of a roadmap and more of a blueprint to keep the whole state trapped in a flooded basement. He talks about raising taxes on the wealthy, and in Minnesota, that apparently means anyone who managed to pay rent this month. Gutfeld isn't just roasting him, he's slow-cooking him to perfection. And seeing Trump and Gutfeld actually agree on something? That's headline-worthy entertainment. Every time Walz gets hit with criticism, he doubles down like a gambler who's already lost the house. Question his bloated budget, he just throws more money at it. Ask about public safety, he hurls out empty slogans like parade confetti. Honestly, he probably believes a motivational poster can single-handedly solve a crime wave.
Quote, as a teacher, my #1 responsibility in the classroom is the safety, security, and belongingness of every single child in that room. These are children my son's age, a 4th grader, a 10-year-old who just wants to go to the bathroom, and their identity is they are male or female, and they just go in that bathroom and use it, end quote. Sounds so folksy, you know? Belongingness. Yeah, they'll be belonging in therapy with this guy at the...
Remember when Minneapolis toyed with the idea of dismantling the police? That was Walz's big moment to prove he could lead. But instead of stepping up with strength and clarity, he tiptoed around the issue like a nervous parent afraid to discipline a toddler. The result? Absolute chaos. Crime shot through the roof, confusion reigned supreme, and the city started to look less like a state capital and more like Gotham, with worse lighting and no Batman in sight. Gutfeld's commentary on Walz turned into therapy for Minnesotans desperate to hear someone, anyone, say what they were already thinking. Their governor couldn't organize his own socks, let alone run an entire state. Trump wasted no time either, dragging out every blunder, every failed plan, every crumbling street, and yes, even every questionable haircut Walz had ever sported. Then came the budget fiasco. Oh, what a train wreck. Under Walz, taxpayer money disappeared faster than excuses, poured into random pet projects, inflated studies, and a mountain of bureaucracy so enormous even Trump seemed stunned. When Walz promised bold infrastructure reform, people dared to hope, until they realized it meant paying consultants to make PowerPoints about potholes. Meanwhile, Gutfeld was busy comparing Minnesota's roads to a live set from Mad Max.
So, this is Governor Walz. There he is. Do you know we're the same age? I know. I know. He looks like the founder of a law firm specializing in personal injury. He looks like the guy at church who remarries 1 month after his wife mysteriously passes away. He looks like the high school football coach who made sure everyone showered after.
And we haven't even gotten to Walz's crusade against landlords. His rent control plan sounded picture perfect in the headlines, but in reality, it was like evicting common sense from the entire housing market. Small landlords packed up and skipped town. Big landlords hiked rents to the moon, and renters were left shivering through winter, literally. And Walz's genius solution, a task force, which in political speak means endless meetings just to argue argue over the definition of the word problem. By this stage, Trump and Gutfeld didn't even need to pile on. The whole mess was collapsing on its own like a soggy tent in a thunderstorm. The same state that gave us Prince, Bob Dylan, and 10,000 Lakes is now being run like a chaotic college dorm, with no resident advisor anywhere in sight. Gutfeld even joked that Walz's leadership strategy is basically a mix of PowerPoint slides and pure confusion. And transportation, don't get started. It's a comedy of errors. Projects are months late, budgets are blown wide open, and the results are embarrassing. He tried rolling out new rail lines, but forgot one small detail. Trains actually need to exist. Even Trump's infamous infrastructure week looked more organized. Walz brags about clean energy while his own government vehicles pump out more fumes than a NASCAR race. At this point, even Trump's private jets are running cleaner.